Hello guys and welcome to my channel. In this video we are talking about how USA's economy works. But before we continue our video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more interesting videos. Have you ever said to yourself, how exactly does the US economy work? During a recession you might think, not too well. This video will be an informative look at how the US economy works and what contributes to its continual success. GDP. Everything the US economy produces is measured by GDP. When the GDP growth rate turns negative, the economy enters a recession. That has happened throughout the history of US recessions. When the economy contracts for years, it's called a depression. The most important part of the economy is consumer spending. The other three components are business expenditures, government spending, and net exports. The US economy is no longer the world's largest. China has outpaced current US GDP statistics. The US is the world's second largest economy, while India and Japan follow in third and fourth place. Supply and demand. Supply and demand are the forces that drive the US economy. Supply includes labor, represented by employment, and natural resources such as oil, land, and water. Oil prices drive 70% of the cost of gas. Demand or personal consumption drives almost 70% of the economy. A lot of this occurs during the holiday shopping season, which starts on Black Friday. The recession increased unemployment. Many people became discouraged over ever finding a job and dropped out of the labor force. As a result, 38.1 million or one-third of Americans are poor or near poor. That's one reason the US economy has slowed. Income inequality wasn't caused by the recession. It began worsening through the 2000s. Inflation and deflation. Inflation occurs when demand is greater than supply and prices go up. Your income and the rate at which it keeps up with rising prices determine how much inflation impacts your life. Inflation is difficult to stamp out. Once it occurs, people begin to expect even higher prices. They will buy now before prices go more up in the future. That increases demand even more. Another cause of inflation is an increase in the money supply. The US government measures the current inflation rate with the Consumer Price Index, but it sometimes gives misleading information. The commodities market determines oil, gas, and food prices. They can skyrocket and plummet within months. The Federal Reserve uses the core inflation rate instead. That excludes energy and food costs. If inflation occurs in assets, such as housing or stocks, it's called an asset bubble. The opposite is deflation. It occurs when prices fall. That also happens to assets, such as housing prices and stock portfolios. United States economic policy. The US government has faced the momentous task of reversing the effects of the recession with a combination of expansionary fiscal and monetary policy. On the fiscal side, government stimulus spending and tax cuts prevented further deterioration of the economy. On the monetary side, the Federal Reserve has tackled economic weakness with both traditional and unconventional policies. The United States is typically regarded as the home of free market economic policies. However, the US government exercises a significant amount of regulation over economic, commercial, and financial activities. Following the recession, the government stepped up its oversight in the financial sector. The Dodd-Frank Act, passed in 2010, represents the most comprehensive reform of financial markets regulation since the Great Depression. Fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the $4 trillion federal budget. All the revenue ultimately comes from taxes on your income, so it is important for you to know how it is spent. Fiscal policy can stimulate, guide, or depress the economy, but only business can create economic growth. The president starts the budgetary process each year, but only Congress has the government spending authority. For example, President Obama's economic stimulus package was his idea, but Congress approved it. Spending outpaces revenue, creating a budget deficit. Each year, it is added to the national debt. One large contributor to the deficit and debt is the Bush tax rebates. They follow the theory of supply-side economics. It says that lower taxes will eventually spur the economy enough to replace the loss in taxes. That hasn't happened. But tax rebates are very popular because people hate paying them. Many have proposed a flat tax or a fair tax. Monetary policy. Monetary policy is controlled by the Federal Reserve. That banking system is guided by the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. The Federal Reserve tools include the Fed funds rate, the money supply, and the use of credit. These tools control how profit rates affect the economy. Compare the current Fed funds rate to historical Fed funds rates to know whether the Fed is using an expansionary or a contractionary monetary policy. The primary objective of monetary policy is to control inflation. Its secondary objective is to stimulate the economy. It is also charged with the smooth functioning of the banking system. For this reason, the Fed chair is often called the most powerful person on the planet. In 2009, Ben Bernanke was named Time's Man of the Year. As the Fed chair, he took aggressive steps to address the 2007 banking meltdown and the 2008 financial crisis. Yet, many critics argue that the United States should return to the gold standard. Trade policy. Trade policy affects the cost of imports and exports by regulating trade agreements with other countries. Trade agreements, like the North American Free Trade Agreement, seek to reduce trade costs and increase each country's GDP. The World Trade Organization attempted an ambitious worldwide trade agreement in the Doha round of trade talks. That didn't work since the European Union and the United States didn't want to end agricultural subsidies. Instead, the United States pursued bilateral and regional trade agreements. These include the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. If they were approved, they would be the largest trade agreements in the world. United States exchange rate policy. The US dollar is often referred to as the world's currency because it is by far the most used currency in the international transactions and also the most widely held reserve currency. Almost 2/3 of currency reserves held throughout the world are in US dollars. Although the Treasury Department has the primary authority to oversee international financial issues, the Treasury's decisions regarding foreign exchanges are made in consultation with the Federal Reserve. However, US intervention in the foreign exchange market has become increasingly less frequent. US authorities typically let the open foreign exchange market and domestic monetary policies determine rates. Financial markets. An implosion in the financial markets threw the economy into the worst recession since the Great Depression. How did this happen? It began with derivatives that were supposed to insure against defaults on subprime mortgages. Demand for the derivatives was so strong, it almost forced insurers like the American International Group to default. That threw Wall Street into a panic which spread throughout the world. Unregulated derivatives created the credit crisis of 2008. The building blocks are stocks and stock investing. They are riskier than bonds. The safest are treasury bonds. The riskiest are junk bonds. You can invest in either with mutual funds. Many wealthy investors let hedge funds do the investing for them. Others seek higher returns by trading in risky commodities, future contracts, and credit default swaps. This made many argue for more regulations on Wall Street. Forces that affect the US economy. 3 forces affect the economy: supply and demand, the business cycle, and inflation. These are measures of how consumers interact with their money and the economy. You can learn how to predict the next recession by understanding how these forces interact with each other and affect consumer behavior. What kind of economy does the US have? The US has a mixed economy that blends some aspects of command and market economies. Relative to other countries around the world, the US is among the more market-oriented nations, but it imposes strict regulations and controls in some areas. How strong is the US economy today? While analysts don't always agree, many use the gross domestic product GDP to gauge the strength of an economy. You might use real GDP to compare national economies, or you might use GDP growth to compare a tracked nation's progress over time. The Federal Reserve publishes charts with both real GDP and real GDP growth data updated quarterly. Finally, the US economy also depends on its citizens. Consumers, investors, and entrepreneurs all contribute to the US economy, helping to create demand and generate goods and services. Individual citizens make up the heart of the US economy, which helps to propel it forward. In summary, the US economy is a complex system that involves a variety of components and stakeholders. The US dollar, stock market, government, and individuals all play an important role in helping to maintain an efficient and reliable economic system. With all of these elements working together, the US economy continues to remain strong and prosperous. That's all for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed our video. For more videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.